Elias Ward stood alone by the wide window in his office. The stars outside looked calm, but Elias knew the galaxy was not. Behind him, the human delegation waited in silence. They had heard the same message. A soft chime broke the silence. Elias turned. His aide, Rhea, stood at the door. She looked pale. "They confirmed it," she whispered. Elias walked toward her. His face stayed calm, but his heart pounded in his chest. "Say it again," Elias said. His voice was steady. Rhea swallowed hard. The council voted. They stripped all human voting rights. Effective today. Elias let out a slow breath. He had expected it, but hearing the words still hit him like a punch to the chest. "Who gave you this?" Elias asked. "Counselor Dallin," Rhea replied. "He says it's already sealed. They're making the announcement tomorrow." Elias closed his eyes for a moment. Dallin was a rare friend in the council, a risk-taker. This leak could cost him his seat, or worse. Elias turned to face the rest of the human delegation. They stood quietly, waiting for his word. "We meet with the council now," Elias said firmly. An hour later, Elias walked into the Grand Council chamber. The air was cold and heavy. The long table was full of alien leaders from every part of the galaxy. At the far end sat Chancellor Virex, tall and thin, his 4 dark eyes watching Elias closely. Elias did not wait for permission to speak. He walked straight to the center of the room. His voice was clear. "I know about the vote," Elias said. His words echoed in the chamber. The council members shifted in their seats. Virex did not move. "What vote?" Virex asked, his voice smooth like oil on glass. "Do not waste our time," Elias replied. "You stripped humans of their rights. You voted in secret. You betrayed us." Whispers filled the chamber. A few counselors lowered their eyes. Others glared at Elias, angry that he had learned the truth. Virex leaned forward. His thin lips curled into a small smile. "The vote is lawful," Virex said. "The Union must protect its balance. Your people have pushed too far, Ambassador." Elias felt the anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face calm. 70 years, Elias said. "We helped build this Union. We solved your wars. We repaired your systems. And now you throw us aside like garbage." Virex stood. He was tall, towering over the others. His voice grew colder. "Human growth is dangerous. Your influence spreads too fast. The council has chosen to limit your reach. For the good of all." Elias looked around the chamber. No one spoke. No one stood up for him. "So this is how it ends?" Elias asked quietly. "After everything we gave, you silence us?" Virex nodded slowly. "Accepted, Ambassador. You may keep your place in the Union, but your power is gone." Elias stood still for a moment. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber without another word. The human delegation followed him in silence. As they left, Elias felt the weight of a choice building inside him. He knew what he had to do, but it would change everything. Elias Ward stood in the meeting room of the human delegation quarters. The lights were dim. The air was tense. Around the large table sat the top human leaders, military officers, scientists, and diplomats. Some looked angry. Others looked afraid. No one spoke. Elias placed both hands on the table and leaned forward. His voice was low but firm. "You all heard what happened," he began. "They voted us out. We have no power left here." General Ava Cross, a tall woman with gray hair, slammed her fist on the table. "They stabbed us in the back," she snapped. "We should fight this. Send our fleets. Show them they can't push us around." Beside her, Dr. Malik Shun, a scientist, shook his head. "That would start a war. We can't win against 300 species. Our colonies would fall within days." Ava turned to him sharply. "And you'd rather sit here and take this like nothing happened?" Malik lowered his eyes, but stayed silent. Elias raised his hand to calm them. "Both of you are right," he said. "War would destroy us, but stay would kill us slowly." The room went quiet again. Elias looked at each person in the room. "For 70 years, we helped build this Union. We gave them our best, our minds, our technology, our trust." His voice grew heavier. "And they threw us aside. What do we do now?" someone asked from the back of the room. Elias took a deep breath. The words felt heavy on his tongue, but he knew they had to be said. "We walk out." A gasp filled the room. Whispers followed. Someone shook their head. Leave the Union? Asked Rhea, standing near the door. We'd lose everything. Our trade routes, our protection. We'd be alone. Elias nodded. Yes, we would. He paused. But we would be free. The room broke into debate. Some shouted. Some argued. Fear filled the air like smoke in a burning ship. Ambassador Lila Ross stood up slowly. She was one of the oldest members of the delegation. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. I've seen what the council does to weak members, she said. First, they take your voice. Then, they take your place. One by one, until your people are forgotten. She turned to Elias. I stand with you. Elias gave her a small nod of thanks. General Avis stood again. If we leave, we need to move fast. Pull our ships. Lock down our tech. Make sure they don't trap us here. Elias turned to her. Do we have the strength to hold our ground? Ava's lips pressed into a thin line. Not forever, but long enough to make them feel our absence. Elias looked around the table once more. I won't force anyone to follow me, he said, but I will not sit here and beg for scraps. If we leave together. Or not at all. One by one, the leaders nodded. We walk, Avis said. I agree, Malik added, though his voice still carried fear. Rhea nodded last. We all stand together. Elias straightened his back. He felt the weight of their trust settle on his shoulders. Good, he said. Prepare the announcement. At tomorrow's session, we walk. As the leaders stood to leave, Elias remained at the table. He stared at the surface for a long moment. He knew this choice would change everything. He knew it could lead to peace or ruin. But he also knew one thing for sure. Humanity would not kneel. The next day arrived faster than anyone expected. The Galactic Union Council gathered again in the Great Chamber. The air felt strange, like a storm was coming. Whispers floated through the rows of leaders seated at the long, curved table. Everyone waited for the humans. Elias Ward entered first. Behind him walked the entire human delegation. They wore formal black uniforms, a sign of mourning in human culture. Some council members noticed. Most ignored it. Chancellor Virex sat high at the end of the chamber. His face showed no emotion. He tapped his long fingers on the table as the humans took their seats. Without waiting for permission, Elias stood. He walked to the center of the chamber again. The silence was so deep, he could hear the hum of the station's engines. Elias looked around the room. His voice was steady and clear. Yesterday, you voted to silence us. Today, we answer that vote. The council shifted. Some leaned forward. Others crossed their arms. Virex tilted his head slightly, watching Elias like a hunter watching prey. We came to the Union as builders, not conquerors, Elias continued. We gave you our science, our skills, our blood, and our trust. We honored every treaty. We kept every promise. Elias paused, letting the weight of his words fill the air. And you betrayed us. A loud murmur rolled through the chamber. Virex raised his hand to silence the crowd. He stood slowly and spoke with a cold smile. Ambassador Ward, you stand here again with strong words. But words will not change the law. The council has spoken. You must accept your new place. Ilyashmith Firexgesh. His voice grew sharper. We will not accept silence. We will not accept chains. He turned to face the chamber. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Union. Gasps broke the silence. Some counselors stood in shock. Others began shouting. The noise rose like a wave crashing through the room. Elias raised his hand, and the human delegation stood with him. One by one, they began walking toward the exit. Virex slammed his fist on the table. His voice roared across the chamber. Stop! You dare to turn your backs on the council? You will lose everything. Your trade, your allies, your protection. Elias stopped at the doorway. He turned back, his face calm. You already took those from us. Without waiting for another word, Elias turned again and left. The entire human delegation followed, step by step, out of the chamber. The great doors closed behind them with a heavy, final sound. Inside, the council was left in chaos. Virex stood frozen for a moment. Then, slowly he sat down. His eyes burned with cold anger. He knew the Union had just lost something it could not easily replace. And for the first time in many years, the council began to panic. Chancellor Virex stood by the tall windows of his private chambers. He stared out at the stars, his face tight with frustration. The silence in the room felt heavy, like the air itself refused to move. Behind him, his closest advisors waited. No one dared to speak first. Finally, Virex turned to face them. "Report," he ordered. Advisor Ralph, a short and pale-skinned Zandari, stepped forward. His voice shook slightly. They had begun pulling their ships, Chancellor. Human vessels have left Union space in several sectors. Their supply lines are already shutting down. Virex narrowed his four eyes. And their technology? Ralph swallowed hard. They have started disabling key systems they built for us. Energy grids, defense networks, transport relays. They hold the master codes. No one else can control them. Another advisor, Talon, a tall creature with blue scales, spoke next. The Union's outer colonies rely on human technology for defense and life support. If they fully disconnect, those colonies will be helpless. Virex gripped the edge of the table. His thin fingers trembled with anger. "We let them rise too fast," he hissed. "We gave them too much power." He turned sharply toward the others. "Options. Now." The room stayed quiet for a moment until Ralph spoke again. "We could offer them trade incentives to return," he suggested weakly. Virex slammed his fist on the table. "Fool! They will not return for scraps." Talon stepped forward. "We could place sanctions on their colonies, block their trade routes, make them suffer until they beg to come back." Virex paused, thinking. His dark eyes scanned the room. "If we move too hard, they will cut off everything," he muttered. "But if we do nothing, others may follow their lead." The advisors nodded. Fear hung in the air. Virex walked slowly to the center of the room. He stared at the Union flag hanging on the far wall, a symbol of power now beginning to crack. "Prepare a list of sanctions," he ordered. "Block their access to Union trade. Freeze their accounts. Make them feel the loss." The advisors bowed and turned to leave. But Virex raised his hand to stop them. "Send word to the border fleets," he added. "Tell them to watch human space closely. No sudden moves yet." Ralph turned back, looking unsure. "Chancellor, what if they fight back?" Virex's thin lips curled into a cold smile. "Then they will learn what it means to stand alone." The advisors left to carry out his orders. Virex stood alone again by the window, watching the stars. But deep inside, even he could feel it, the first cracks had already started to spread. The Union, once solid and strong, now felt fragile. And all because the humans had dared to walk away. Elias Ward stood in the command center of a human flagship, resolute. The giant view window showed the blue curve of Earth in the distance. Home, the place they had sworn to protect, no matter the cost. "Report," Elias said calmly. Rhea stood at the main console. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. "We've shut down all Union-linked systems in our sectors. No ships from the Union can access our gates. No data streams. No supplies moving in or out." Elias nodded. "And our colonies?" "All secure," Rhea answered. "They've begun locking down their networks. We've sent defense ships to the border worlds. Everyone's ready." Elias turned to General Ava Cross, who stood at the tactical station. "What about the Union fleets?" Ava's face was like stone. "They're watching us. No direct moves yet, but they've started placing trade blocks. Cargo ships are being turned away. Our supply lines are tightening." Elias knew this was coming. He had expected it, but hearing the words out loud made the risk feel heavier. "How long before it starts to hurt?" he asked. Ava crossed her arms. "Weeks, maybe days. Without Union trade, some colonies will struggle to get medical supplies, fuel, and food. We can last, but not forever." Elias looked down at the glowing table map. Human space looked small compared to the Union's wide reach. But every dot on that map was worth fighting for. "We hold the line," Elias said firmly. "Let them feel what life is like without us." Ava nodded. "They're already feeling it. Reports say systems are starting to fail. Defense grids are shutting down. Some Union colonies are exposed." Rhea added, "Other species are starting to ask questions. I've received private messages from 3 different counselors. They're wondering if they made a mistake. Elias allowed himself a small breath of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. Let them wonder, he said. Suddenly, the room's communication panel beeped. Rhea stepped forward and opened the channel. A calm but cold voice came through. This is Union Command. You are in violation of Council Order 77. Stand down your ships and reconnect Union systems, or face economic punishment and military action. Ava let out a low breath. There it is. Elias stepped forward, his face steady. Send a reply, he said. Rhea looked up at him. What do you want to say? Elias didn't need to think. The words were already waiting inside him. Tell them this. We will not stand down. We will not reconnect. Humanity chooses freedom over fear. Do what you must. So will we. Rhea nodded and sent the message. The line was drawn. There was no turning back now. Elias looked again at the map, at the thin border between human space and Union space. He knew the days ahead would be hard, but for the first time in weeks, he felt something deep in his chest. Pretty. Humans had walked away, and they were still standing. The Union requested a private meeting. No cameras, no records, no audience. Elias Ward agreed. The location was set on Haven, a small moon station in neutral space. It was far from any Union fleet, far from any human colony. It was just the right place for two enemies to speak without fear of spies or guns. Elias arrived with only Rhea and General Ava Cross. Virex arrived with two silent guards. No words were spoken as they entered the plain metal meeting room. The walls were bare. The air felt cold. Elias sat on one side of the long table. Virex sat on the other. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Elias leaned back in his chair. You asked for this meeting. Say what you came to say. Virex's four black eyes watched him closely. You have made your point, he said quietly. The Council feels the loss of your people. Systems are failing. Members are restless. Elias said nothing. He waited. Virex leaned forward. We are prepared to offer peace. Ava's hands tensed on the table, but she held her tongue. Virex continued. Return to the Union. We will restore your trade. We will allow you to keep your ships and your colonies. But your voting power will remain limited. You will not hold a council seat again. Rhea let out a soft breath, almost like a laugh. So, nothing changes. Virex ignored her. His cold eyes stayed locked on Elias. You know you cannot survive alone forever, Virex added. We have the numbers, the markets, the fleets. Elias leaned forward, placing both hands flat on the table. His voice was firm but quiet. You still don't understand, Elias said. We didn't leave because of trade. We didn't leave because of seats. We left because we will not be ruled by fear. Virex's face twitched slightly, the closest thing to anger Elias had ever seen in him. You are reckless, Virex hissed. You risk the lives of billions. You risk collapse. For what? Pride. No, Elias said. For dignity. For freedom. For the right to stand as equals or not stand at all. Virex's fingers tapped the table slowly. You are making a mistake. Elias stood up. Ava and Rhea stood with him. We will never return under your chains, Elias said. If the Union truly wants peace, you will offer us full equality. Nothing less. Virex stood as well. The tension in the room felt sharp, like a blade pressed to the skin. And if we refuse? Virex asked. Elias leaned slightly forward, his voice calm but filled with steel. Then the Union will learn what it feels like to break itself. Without another word, Elias turned and walked out of the room. Ava and Rhea followed close behind. Virex watched them leave. His hands curled into fists at his sides. For the first time in his long life, Virex felt something worse than anger. He felt doubt. The Union Council chamber was silent. For the first time in its long history, every seat was filled, yet no one dared to speak first. The weight of failure hung over the room. Systems were failing. Colonies were angry. Trade was crumbling. At the far end of the chamber, Chancellor Virex sat motionless. His cold eyes stared at nothing. Days had passed since the secret meeting with Elias Ward. The council had argued day and night, but no solution had come. Now they had reached the edge. Virex slowly stood and faced the leaders gathered before him. The humans will not return on our terms, he said, his voice empty of pride. "We have two choices. Keep pushing and risk full collapse, or admit our mistake." The room shifted with unease. One by one, counselors began to stand. A few tried to speak, but their voices cracked. The fear of losing everything had finally broken through their pride. Counselor Dallin, the one who had secretly warned Elias weeks ago, stood last. He spoke in a voice that was steady and clear. "The Union is already breaking. If we lose the humans forever, we lose everything." Virex lowered his head. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, without looking up, he gave the words no one thought they'd ever hear. "Send them the offer. Full rights, full equality, an equal seat at this table." The chamber was still as the message was prepared and sent. Hours later, in the command center of the Resolute, Elias stood in silence as Rhea read the official message out loud. General Ava crossed her arms. "Took them long enough." Elias said nothing at first. He closed his eyes and let out a long breath. The weight of the long fight, the risks, the sleepless nights, it all pressed on him at once. But he stood tall again. "This time, we go back standing as equals," he said. "No begging, no fear." Rhea nodded. Ava gave a sharp smile. "Let's finish this." The council chamber filled again the next day. This time, there was no whispering. All eyes turned to the great doors as they opened. Elias Ward entered first, followed by the human delegation. The humans did not rush to their seats. They walked slowly, proudly, as if they owned the room. And in many ways, they did. Elias stopped in front of Virex. The Chancellor stood, his face as unreadable as ever. Elias spoke first, his voice filling the chamber. "We return on our terms. No less." Virex nodded once. There was no fight left in him, only quiet respect. "Welcome back, Ambassador Ward." Elias turned to the rest of the chamber. He saw counselors lower their heads in silent acceptance. Humanity had won, not with ships, not with weapons, but with unity, with the courage to walk away, and the strength to return standing tall. As the meeting began, Elias took his seat, an equal seat at the council table. Far beyond the chamber walls, across the stars, the Union had changed forever, and humanity had claimed its place, not as servants, but as leaders,